Welcome back, everybody, to another episode. And today I have a very special guest that some people have been wanting back for a very long time.
I return. Your doom is nigh.
Ian has joined me again, which I'm very glad he has, and he's written up some rules for us. Well, we've written up some rules. Um, what are we reviewing today?
Psychic spells and magic and the psychic rule in general.
Yeah, we're talking about space magic and how you can use it for your various little groups.
Yeah.
So, this is a way to flavor your little gangs and kill teams and whatnot a bit more. The list of teams is small, but there is a few teams that I've already written down that aren't in the game yet, but when they're added, they will have their own discipline and everything.
Like mine.
Yes.
You're gonna have you're gonna have to wait for the scary one to come out.
So, psycher. So, let's go over psychic disciplines. What are they? Effectively, they are a group of 6 spells you get to choose from. These spells are range from very powerful to decent to just remove a model from play. But they do have downsides. The big thing about Psychers is even if you fail a check, even if you fail a psychic check, it's something's still going to happen. So it's not all doom and gloom. Just because you fail to roll does not mean your soul is going to be eaten alive. So here's a list of teams they can be applied to: Bandits, Neurosync pilots, which they're
The
like,
only pilot half.
yeah, only the
We're
pilots.
we're working on a mech that does magic.
High rollers, Militia Cell, and for the ones that aren't in the game yet, the Ruinous Occult, the Void Worm Occult, Cult of the Red Star, Hunter of the Damned.
And the Mungian scholars. The
Yeah.
last two I'm gonna be making. Well,
Yes.
I've made one of them.
So you're basic. So a lot of these guys are human or human adjacent, which they're on a bit of a squishier side to balance us out. Now, question is, how
Keyword.
do you get a psyker? No, no. Instead, players assign the psyker keyword to their operatives. The number of psychers you can have is limited to half the leader count rounded up. So if you have 1 leader, you can have one. If you have 2 leaders, you can have two. If you have three, so on and so forth. Um, Psychers individually are assigned a psychic discipline during list building. So like when you first get them, you'll choose spells for them. Ian, would you like to list off what disciplines there are?
There is telepathy, telekinesis, pyromancy, biomancy, Cybanish, bloodcoin, metallurgy, and toxin.
Yes. Each one you can choose up to 6 spells per discipline. Now, mind you, we'll get to why in a minute. Why you may not, or you want to take more than like 2 or 3, or you may or may not take 6. There is another discipline called Estranged. Estranged, you choose up to 6 other disciplines and you roll a d6, and you get a spell from that discipline equal to the roll. So you can flavor up a random psyker, and you can kind of get one from thing. You can randomly pick and choose, which could be very useful. There are some combinations out there that are really good. Um,
Zirconium pants.
so you can use psychic spells on a psych. So psychic spells can only be casted from the caster once per every round. So, for example, you could have 6 spells on one psyker, use all of them, and you can have another one. You can have another psyker of 6 spells and use them. Think of it as like free form actions. You can use them whenever you want, just when the situation is appropriate, and it has to fit in with the conditions. If your psyker is not doing too hot on the psychic resistance and the psychic skill point, which I don't think we explained yet. Okay. Psychic resistance is equal to 1/4 of your defense value, rounding up. So if you have 1 defense, you have 1 psychic resistance, so on and so forth. Psychic resistance reduces damage and opposing rolls. So if somebody is doing a psychic spell against me and I have psychic resistance 2, they reduce their psychic check, well, their psychic skill roll by 2. And if that spell was to do any damage, I reduce it by 2. Anyway, back to it. The Psi Stave gives +1 to PR and PS. So it ooms you up a little bit more, and which could be very helpful whenever you take damage against psychic spells. And it makes you better at casting. However, you do have to give up a melee or shooting weapon for a Psi Staff. Could be potentially debilitating to a faction that,
Wants both.
Yeah.
Then again, if you have a pistol on a guy who wants to kill people with hammers, you get rid of the pistol.
True, but usually pistols have the one-handed keyword, which means you can use them in the same action as an attack.
Still, kill people with hammers.
True. And there's some factions like the Militia Cell that have actually really decent melee weapon options for such a fragile faction that would want them because a lot of their operatives will die. So, you want to get that kamikaze suicide charge off, get your damage, and then let it die. Losing a really good melee weapon or ballistic skill weapon, it's up for debate for your faction, obviously. The Psi Staff also grants a reroll on psychic checks. Very good as well. Now, how does the psychic check work? When you cast a spell, you roll a die, a d10 specifically, and you need to roll equal or below to the psychic skill value. Like I said earlier, success, it has full effect, failure has reduced. Now, failed spell checks are different for if they're a leader operative or not. If they're a non-leader psyker, they take d3 damage. If they're a non-leader psyker that has a failed morale check, they take damage equal to the numbers of spells they have. Which goes back to earlier, you may not want to take 6 spells on a psyker, a non-leader psyker, because you could just kill him right off the bat.
He could explode.
That's true. And leader psychers under a failed morale check take damage equal to the number of failed spells they've done this game. So it starts out at 0, and then it slowly ramps up. Very debilitating, but it's very flavorful too, because your non-leader guys are probably not very smart compared to your leaders who are, improvised commanders, rich kids, rich kid, but richer than every other rich kid. List goes on. They obviously stand out better. I guess for the first one, telepathy.
Yes. We do not have these in alphabetical order. Sorry.
So, do you want to go 1-2, 1-2?
Sure.
All right. Emboldened Spirit. It is 24-inch range. It can be applied on friendly operatives, so including the caster. You dispel any and all debuffs, and you pass a morale check. Failed effect, you reroll their morale check. And this gets into that whole thing from earlier. Failing a spell check isn't like it has no effect. Some of them do have it, but not all of them. Emboldened Spirit is very good on factions that will be suffering from morale checks a lot, especially Militia Cell, because trying to get a 5 or below on a D10 with debuffs is very disheartening.
Or if you're fighting a faction that causes a lot of morale effects.
Yeah. Next one.
Hunters of the Damned.
Next one. Cease action.
that's on you because it was. Oh wait, no, it's 1-2,
Yeah,
1-2.
yeah, it's 1-2.
Uh, um, target enemy. So on a successful effect, this has a 12-inch range. You can target yourself, a friendly, and or enemy operative. I don't know why you would target yourself with this one.
Actually, there's
Targeted,
a reason why, but we'll get into why in a minute.
it still had. Target enemy operative cannot perform this action. Perform the action they were about to perform. If they fail it, reduce the skill by 1 on that enemy operative's next action. So if he's making a charge, he would probably. Would it be both movement and melee, or would it just be.
It would be both because they're 2 in 1.
Alright.
Since you can target self, we're going to get to why you would want to do that. Cease action is very good for preventing charges or overwatches, but the main reason why you would target yourself with this is because of the next one, assisted murder. It's range 6. You target enemy operative and it shoots itself with one weapon of this player's choice, which is why you would target yourself with cease action.
Note: this has no effect on mech operatives, automaton operatives, vehicle operatives, or Deathwatch / trauma team. Do you think we should make demons not be affected by it either?
Nah, we'll get to that in a minute. Basically, if they're made out of steel or if they're being controlled by an alternate source beyond our understanding, it's not going to work on them. Who would have thunk it having a supercomputer plugged into your brain is going to stop you shooting yourself?
Or being made out of magic?
It could be very good against, I don't know, a heavy mortar or a weapon that relies on like blast radius, because why not? Or
Sniper rifle?
Sniper. Well, literally anything good in the game that could kill its own wielder in one shooting action, very disheartening.
Rocket launcher.
Next up, smoke and mirrors.
They poured less gasoline on it. They poured more gasoline on him this time. All right, smoke and mirrors. 12-inch range. Target friendly, or self. Target operative gains invisible on its turn. If it fails, target operative gains dodge on its turn.
So, invisible means it can't be targeted unless it's the only operative left.
Invisible.
Dodge, the next attack action fails. Very good either way. I think if you're going for an Estranged Psyker or trying to go for like the less amount of spells possible, I think this one is probably your best bet.
Invisible.
Next one, forced to act. You can target self-friendly enemy. Target operative goes next after the usage of this like spell. Could be very insane for chain activations, because it does not state if they've already activated or not. You could just bounce right back to them. So you could, I don't know, double Sandpoint heavy missiles. You could. There are so many combinations in this game we can't discuss yet because of the faction. But
2 sniper rifle shots.
yeah, there's a lot of silly combinations in this game. And I'm sure when people start building teams, they'll be able to see it, and I'm sure I'll have to FAQ or nerf some things. Regardless of that, I think
when just as an additional, when the hunters of the dam get their hands on this, and we show you that guy, be concerned because it targets self.
Yeah, because remember, it's Psychic Spell isn't an action. It's just whenever. Could be very... What's the word I'm looking for here? Very insane to go up against, because you don't know if you're going to make it out alive of that melee blunder.
There's, not to spoil anything, but one of their options allows them to cast a spell again.
Yeah. So you could have 3 activations in a single round.
Back to back to back.
Yeah. All right. And then the last one is hallucinogenic trip.
Target range 24 inches. Target self-friendly or enemy. On a successful effect, target operative cannot perform any other actions on their activation besides normal movement until the end of their activation. Their movement value is replaced with D6. On a failed, on their next activation, until the end of their activation, their movement is replaced with D6.
Very powerful, um, because you can effectively just shut a guy down. D6 for some factions is helpful because sometimes they get lucky and get a 4 for a movement action, and sometimes they only get 1. But for factions that have more than just 6 movement per movement action, this is insane. This is
Max.
yeah, mechs or literally any faction that wants to go fast. I hope you enjoy having to roll a d6 every time you want to charge. Yeah. And since charges are usually guaranteed, they're a 1.5 multiplier of your movement value. So if you have 4 movement, you just add 2 to it. If you have a 6-inch movement and so on and so forth, nah, you just get replaced with d6.
Surprise.
Yes. So,
So,
telepathy allows you to manipulate your enemies and allows you to manipulate yourself. That's very simple. It deals with a lot of mind stuff. Now, instead of actual mental stuff, how about using your brain to do stuff in the real world?
throw rocks at people. Kill them with hammers.
So, kinetic shield. It's 6 inches. It can be applied to self, friendly, or enemy, which could be very good. Um, the reason why you would apply it to an enemy, there are some factions that can manipulate you, which we'll get to later in another video. Successful effect, you get a 6-up save, so that's a d10, 6 and above, instead of a 6 or below, and you reduce damage by 1 to a minimum of 1. On a failed effect, you just simply do a reduced damage until end of their activation. Very good. It's a nice way to make your little soft militia guys of 6 HP live a lot longer. And it could mean a lot to factions like the High Rollers, who want to stay on the board, but they too are a bit flimsy. A lot of them are only 8 HP or even 6 HP. So being able to reduce damage by 1 for every attack is very solid. Now, next one. This is all you, buddy. Rakalaba.
Rock lava. By the way, if you get the references that some of these spells are, I named them. Sorry.
Yeah.
Rock lava. Target enemy range 24 inches. Successful effect. Target enemy takes 3 unavoidable damage. Takes 3 damage that cannot be modified. It forces a morale test. If they fail, they are inflicted with daze, which reduces their activations by 1. And if it's a failed effect, they just take 2 unmodified damage. You're throwing a rock at someone with the power of your mind. This is the equivalent of explodes pancakes with mind.
This is basically, how do I say this? Yeah,
You
it's
know
still
the
2 damage that can be modified, but imagine 6 guys with this. Like, if you have 6 leaders, you have 6 guys with it. Well, 6 leaders, rounding down, 3
3.
psychers. 3 psychers using this spell. If they all succeed, that's 9 damage.
True. That's 1 dead high roller.
Yeah. Well, that's 1 dead a lot of things, actually.
Yeah.
But next up is Weightless Waltz. Successful effect, you get to perform a movement action of any kind. So normal, like a normal movement action or a charge. Normal, charge, ascension, or descension. Ascension is like going up a ladder or something, and descension's coming down. The failed effect, you just perform a normal movement action, so it's just moving. It's powerful for factions that don't have a lot of movement, or a lot of factions that do want to move around, like the High Rollers, where they have a lot of them have a 4-inch movement, but your Swindler has a 5-inch movement. So moving, I don't know, 15 inches is insane. Round
The
one.
mech pilots, the neurosync pilots.
Yeah, the Neurosync pilots, they also, I think they have, well, they have grav shoot. Well, they have the grav shoots.
Yeah,
And
but you can do it again.
yeah, well, the first movement action they have is free. So it's 4 inches, 4 inches, 4 inches, and another 4 inches. So 16 inches is still a pretty big deal, especially considering they ignore terrain when moving. So you can
Yeah.
just straight up beeline, and then you can just hit him with a Cyber Fist. Yeah.
Speaking of ignoring terrain when moving, Astral Lift, target self-friendly or enemy 6-inch range. On a successful effect, ignore terrain and scale while moving. Scale is just caring about height, and failed effect is you just ignore the scale when moving.
Yeah, it could definitely play into effect when ascending or descending. Ignoring terrain is something entirely different. Terrain is like a one-story building. Scale is like several different floors. So imagine being on the first floor of a building and just being able to go to like the 10th floor. Very
Up,
crazy.
uppies.
But if you don't want to, actually move and just want to disappear, you can do Phantom Shift. It's a 12-inch range. It's self or friendly. You can remove them from the board, and they can be placed anywhere on the table, 9 inches away from any other operatives. Insane power play potential for getting on like higher terrain or positioning. Could also be good
Turn one
for
objective.
that too. Yeah, especially for objectives like caravan, like caravan runner and convoy protection, which I'll share those to you later. But those missions really rely on you being able to escort the objective as it moves. So being able to get there early and activate it early for some points, amazing. But let's say you don't want to disappear, but you want your enemies to, and that's where forceful relocation comes in, Ian.
So it's 6-inch range, self-friendly enemy. Target on a successful effect, target operative moves back uh, 6 plus D3 inches or moves forwards towards the caster 6 inches. And on a failed, you just replace this 6/6 plus D3 with D6 inches.
Yeah. It's a nice way to get melee threats out of your way, especially when they charge, because let's say
Or
somebody
is
charges
squishy to
you.
you.
Yeah. Um, but no, like let's say you have like an abominant alpha, just your casual giant brick 20 HP defense 3, might be even 4 with cover. Um, they do their charge. Nah, move back 63 inches. Try again next time, buddy.
Or, you know, you could just
So
push them off the map or into a lava pit or
you
something.
could push them off of like a building.
Whee!
Now, if you don't want to kill things with your mind, how about you use your mind to kill things with fire? That's where pyromancy comes in. For starters, pyromantic charge. It can be self, friendly, or enemy. The next attack this operative performs has burning d6 that cannot be resisted. If it has burning d6 already or greater, all damage dealt by the weapon is increased by 2. Very good against if a weapon already has d3 burning, or literally burning d6 plus 2 damage increase isn't that bad. Like, we're talking like flamethrowers here. Flamethrowers are always damage 1, so getting damage 3 flamethrowers is very solid.
Especially on the mech heavy flamethrower, which
Yeah, the heavy mech flamethrower, that's D8. So D8 attacks, burning D6, that's gonna hurt.
yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't have any armor penetration or really any damage, but being able to like three dice, um, 3 dice isn't half bad. On sevens or below, it's not bad. Um, all right, I'm gonna take over for a little bit. Over Ian. Um, Pyro Burst. It's you target enemy. Um, all operatives around them, and of course them, in a 3-inch radius are forced to take a morale test. If they fail, they're inflicted with burning D3. Burning, how it works is there's only one stack of burning at a time. If a greater stack of burning is inflicted, you remove the previous stack. So just keep scaling. And a failed effect, they are forced to take a morale test. If they fail, they're inflicted with burning D3. And that's only the target enemy. This is very good for clearing out horde enemies, specifically things like the Abominants. The Abominants really enjoy their lesser units, their newborns, because their newborns can join together into a single group and act as one. So being able to deal a lot of damage to a single group effectively is what's important here. Granted, they are 6 health, so you're going to have to do this ability multiple times to wipe out a crowd of them, but it's still insanely powerful. Ceaseless Discharge. And next operative, with any amount of attacks that attacks this operative, suffers from the Overheat rule. How Overheat works is after you attack, you roll a dice for each attack that you did, regardless if it hit or not. On a result over 1, you take 3 damage. Could be very good against weapons that have a lot of attacks, like flamethrowers or machine guns that have an insane amount of attacks. Just anything that has a large amount of attacks but low damage is a very good trade. The militia is a good example where they have a lot of weapons with a lot of attacks, like their shotguns and their submachine guns. But they only have 6 HP, so most of the time, 2 ones will kill them. After that, we have the Ash Cloud. Ian?
Yes. This is the equivalent of the bong rip. Ash Cloud, self-friendly target. All friendly operatives, including caster within 6 of wherever you target this, gain dodge until end of game round. And then if you fail, it's only within 3 inches. But you still gain dodge until end of game round.
Still incredibly powerful, especially for a team like the militia cell, where they have a lot of operatives. They're the largest kill team of technically 11. So being able at the start of the game to cloak up a bunch of your team if they're deployed next to the Psyker is very good. I think a lot of people, if you're going to take one spell, or like multiple spells, or if you're taking a strange Psyker, you're hoping to get Ash Cloud, or you want Ash Cloud. But if you want to go the more, I don't know, immediate implosion route, there's spontaneous combustion. Basically, you target an operative that's inflicted with burning, and then they immediately take the maximum damage equal to the maximum value of the dice. So if it's a D6, they take 6. If it's a D3, it's 3. If it's a D10 or D8, you take those numbers. And then you remove burning. If it's failed, there's no effect. This is it is insanely good. If you inflict burning D6 on a militia guy, just use this and just watch him just explode, which will trigger their militia levy rule. And militia levy, when an operative is killed within 6 inches of this operative, takes a morale test. If they fail, they have to move back 4 inches. So you are really hindering. This isn't just crowd control. This is like watching somebody immolate into nothing. It's a good spell. There's not much else to really say on it.
If you're able to get to, for whatever reason, burning D8 or D10, that will take a good chunk of a max health away as well.
Yeah, 10 is like the break point for some factions where they either where they're like, oh yeah, for a lot of factions out there, they don't have 10 wounds. Factions that do have 10 wounds or more, they can live, but they're not going to have much left over.
Other than the one that yet has been named / is been, but
yeah.
Youch.
Taking 10 hit points away from a heavy mech, very good.
It nearly kills it.
Well,
I think
it nearly kills any of the mechs. Light mech is only 12, and the medium mech is only 14.
Heavy's 18, so
yeah. So just ripping off 10 or 8 or literally any amount for guaranteed damage, very good. But let's say you douse your hand in gasoline, or a more correct term, thermite.
Thermite fist. This is your pyromancy anti-tank option. Successful effect. Oh, wait. Right. Range self. You have to target yourself for this. Target operative chooses one melee weapon. It gains ignore defense and burning D3. If it already has burning D3 or greater, and all damage dealt by this weapon for each attack dice is increased by 1. If it's failed, target operative chooses one melee weapon, gains burning D3. If it already has, basically it ignores defense.
Which ignoring defense is a pretty big deal, because it means a simple high roller, which would usually hit on 6s or 7s against like a heavy mech with defense 4, so they'd be hitting on 3s. They go back to hitting on 7s. So it's definitely a game changer and something that you do want to take. Ignoring defense on anything is really good, even if it's just like a simple, like, dinky little knife. If it has it, it's a really good choice. But let's say you're more of a healer than a harmer. You're not a harmacist, you're a pharmacist. That's where biomancy comes in. Biomancy, there really isn't much about it. First spell is Vital Surge. Basically, you dispel any and all debuffs, and you gain regen 2. Regeneration 2 is at the start of your activation. You regenerate that many hit points. Its failed effect, you remove 1 debuff, and then you gain regeneration 1. Very simple, very nice. Being able to cleanse debuffs and be able to regenerate is always nice. Could have limited effect on factions that have lower hit points, because you may want them to die and use that spell on somebody else that round. After that, Flesh Weave.
So Flesh Weave. Target operative range 24 inches. Is probably friendly in self. Target friendly operative may choose to. Oh, it's specifically friendly. Target friendly operative may gain a chosen amount of HP from the caster. The caster takes that much damage, and for failed, it randomizes the amount of damage and health to a d6.
Yeah, so you could sacrifice your caster if he has more health than your leader and just take away all of his health and give him to your leader. Or it just could be a nice way to top off an operative. Like if they're missing like 1 or 2 damage. And then Siphon Life, it's basically the opposite. You target an enemy operative, they take d6 damage, and you regain HP equal to the amount lost. And if it's a failed effect, there's no effect. if you're looking for more of an expansion from if you're looking for like a bonus of rock lava and cease action, and you just want a nice little middle ground, there is muscle spasm.
So muzzle spasm. Successful effect. Target enemy operative cannot perform the action they are about to perform, and they take two unavoidable damage. And then on failed, they reduce the skill by 1 on enemy operative's next attack, and they take 1 unavoidable damage.
Yeah, so it's a nice little in between. Just being able to shut down an enemy operative and take damage, and they take damage for it, is very good. There's not really much to say on it. I mean, just being able to cease an action they were about to perform. No, it's not canceling out. It just means you just can't perform it. You have to do something else. So like, or you could try again next action. It's that simple. Speaking of simple, mend flesh, you regen D6, and then failed effect, you regen D3. And then Flesh's Seal, you get a 6-up save, and you reduce damage by 1. So it's kind of like your kinetic shield option. What is your kinetic shield option? If you want to go back to being a harm assist, but specifically towards psychers or demons, there's Psybanish. So, first one, Psyblock. No spells. Target enemy operative can't cast one spell of this player's choice until the end of the round. Well, end of turn. It should say that every operative is their own turn. So this could mean something it's very situational, but being able to deny a player like a free reaction. Next one is physical banishment. Go ahead, Ian.
Physical banishment. Target operative. Range 24 inches. So, this one has a condition. If the enemy psyker or demon possesses a higher size skill than the caster, it becomes X plus roll. So, like, if they have a 6 plus 7, equal to their psychic value. On a successful, the enemy demon or psyker is banished from the game. They do not count for any objectives with condition. They don't count for any objectives, win conditions, or any other parameters besides for elimination. In Clash Point, this operative gains dead. On a failed cast, the caster must take a morale roll. On success, take only D3 damage. On fail, take D6 plus 1 damage.
So, physical banishment is obviously for flavor. If you take like 3 psychers with this, I think you deserve not being able to play with friends again. It's flavorful for some forces, but I don't think you should take this on every team you have. I think physical banishment is more, like I said, it's more flavor than anything. I don't know. I don't think you should spam this at all. I think it's very unsportsmanlike. On the more simpler side, Hands of the Righteous, it's 6 inches. Target friendly operatives melee weapons gain +1 damage and daze when attacking demons and psychers. It's not too crazy. It's not going to break the game. Putting daze on somebody, giving them -1 action, and they can't overwatch because they can't assist or whatever. Very good. And failed effect, there's no effect. It's that simple. Now, another daze/damage dealer is Hollowed Light. Target enemy operative, demon specifically, takes 3 unavoidable damage and forced to take a morale test. If they fail, they're inflicted with daze. And the failed effect is just you don't do any damage, but you can still inflict daze. Now, another way to counter Bloodcoin or any spam is Counterspell.
Yeah. Counterspell. Range 12 inches. On a successful effect, target enemy operative fails their spell. They do not take damage. They do not count. They do not take damage for failing the spell if it was failed courtesy of counterspell.
But it doesn't say that it stops the condition which is about to come, which is involved with Bloodcoin, and we're going to get to Bloodcoin in a minute, and why it's very important that you keep using it. Then the final one, Power into Belief. It's a dispel any debuffs, pass a morale check, and failed effect. You can reroll morale checks. It's pretty much your emboldened spirit, but for Banish. So you're gonna see a lot of spells in here that exist for other spells, just under a different title. They will probably undergo some change when we figure them out more and when we find their place in the game. But besides that, um, Banish is a pretty good catalog of anti-psyker and anti-demon stuff. Now, if you want to be an anti-everything, and if you're tired of rolling dice and you just want to take the damage instead, take Bloodcoin. Bloodcoin, instead of taking a roll, you instead deal damage to the caster. And the first one being Sanguine Exchange.
Is this me?
Yes.
So Sanguine Exchange, self or friendly, range 6 inches. Condition, this will be all the same for all of them. You do not roll to pass the side check. Instead, you take D3 unavoidable damage. Effect, target friendly operative or this caster gains a skill bonus, melee skill or ballistic skill, and until the end of their this operative's encounter. So like their fight action or whatever, or when they're shooting, the skill bonus is equal to the d6 roll of the damage.
Yeah. Could be very insane with some operatives that are hitting very low, or it could be a nice way just to get a perfect 10. Either way, very good. And it leads to a bunch of funny instances too, because let's say you do this on a militia, you only have 6 hit points. So if you take 6, you just die. And they still get the skill increase.
They explode.
Yeah. Crimson Tithe?
Note, there is currently only 2 things in game with skill 2 or 10.
Yeah. And they are very good at what they do. Crimson Tithe. It's self or friendly. It's 24 inches. On top of taking 1d6, you must elect a total amount of damage you deal or take with this operative. So, for every point in damage dealt, perform a movement action with the value of the amount of damage dealt. So if you do 20 damage, you move 20 inches. For every point of damage taken, if selected, this operative regains that much HP. So it's basically like, yeah, keep shooting into me, see what happens. And in Clashpoint, which is a expansion rule set, which we'll get into when we get into individual factions, if it was killed under the effects of Crimson Tithe, you go from heavily injured to injured. This makes a really big difference because getting -2 to all of your stats is a lot worse than getting -1 to all of your stats. I think if I'm going to die this round anyway, if I'm going to die this turn with this operative anyway in melee, I might as well pop this, and then when I die in Clashpoint, he's just injured. Unless he gets dead, and then, well, that sucks.
Yeah.
Next up, Bloodshiv.
Bloodshiv. Target enemy range 12 inches. You do not. Yeah. So you take an enemy operative takes damage equal to the d6 roll of the unavoidable damage.
So basically, the damage you take is what they take. Once more, could be a great way to clean something up that there's only 6 HP left.
Or, you could just sacrifice one of your dudes and deal 6 damage.
That is true. Um, Especially considering the fact that, it applies after death, so your guy could be at 1 hit point, he takes 5 hit points, and so does the enemy. Now, after that, Tasteful Carnage. 1d6 roll to pass. Well, 1d6 damage. In successful effect, all your melee weapons have lifelink. Um, could be insane on a melee blender character that has a lot of health. Or, better yet, put this on, I don't know, the Hunter of the Damned, run over a few people, and get hit points back.
Yeah.
And for the whole rolling over somebody thing, it's called, what's it called? Rolling Thunder. If they
It's
have,
rolling thunder on vehicles. It's thunderous charge on non-vehicles.
yeah,
It's the same rule. It's just
I forgot
we
to
have
change
to
that.
account for vehicle/non-vehicle
Next
just
up,
in case.
Unstoppable Frenzy. 1d6 unavoidable damage, obviously as a condition. You gain attack dice equal to the damage taken with all melee skill weapons on its operative. You must then perform a charge action into the closest enemy, friendly or enemy. So you have to effectively fight them. On a failed effect,
Another
if you do not kill an operative with this ability, it is considered failed, and you take 3 unavoidable damage. Once more, is incredibly punishing if you have like an 8 wound operative, and if you take 5 damage, and then you don't kill something, and then you take 3 more, could be penalizing. The next one, here's the big one, the one that you want to keep using, because if you don't, it's bad. Butcher's Wager. You take the 1d6 unavoidable damage as your condition. You then elect a total amount of kills that you'll claim this round with this operative. It starts at 1, and with each use of the ability, you increase it by 1. Note you don't take additional d6 damage after the first use. The successful effect is you gain +1 damage and +1 melee skill until the end of the game for every kill claimed. However, if you do not meet the total amount of tally kills for the round, they are removed from play. If it's Clash Point, they gain dead. This is why, so if you don't keep casting this thing, or, if you get shut down with something that can kill a lot of things, if you don't meet your tally count, this is incredibly punishing.
This also sucks if the enemy team only has one model or has a low model count to begin with. That's super tough. Something like mech pilots.
Well, it's not even that. It's like if you're playing against a horde team with an elite team, at some point your tally count will be too high, and then just
True.
yeah. Um, Mind you, Butcher's Wager is not per psyker. It's just when you use it at all. So, like, if you cast it multiple times on a psyker, that upcrease in tally count applies to everybody involved. So, enjoy that. Um, but it's still insanely powerful. I think +1 melee skill and +1 damage is insane. Especially against a horde faction. You just throw out a blast radius weapon at somebody, watch them all die, and reap the rewards. Speaking of explosions, or just things that go boom, or that are made of metal entirely, you have Metallurgy.
Yes.
Vengeance of the Tinmen. Friendly operative, that's a mech, automaton, or vehicle. When they are killed and about to be removed from play, they perform one last fight action with one of their weapons. Doesn't mean much for a lot of teams out there, but, for mech pilots that have a lot of weapons, that's very good. Or, in
Or
this case, the militia cell with their battle tank.
or when we eventually make a robot kill team, hint hint, wink wink.
Could be insanely devastating, especially just if it's a pretty good trade. Gunpowder Monkey. It's a 24-inch range. You target friendly operative. They gained their explosives and grenade weapons gain +2 to blast radius and +1 damage. Note this doesn't stack because grenades and explosives do share a lot of keywords. Um, but having a 6-inch flashbang, yeah, the 6-inch flashbang is kind of cool. Or a anti-tank grenade with a 4-inch blast radius, or even better, a 8-inch blast radius smoke grenade weapon. Kind of heavy.
Yes.
Plus, just having extra radius is always good.
Yeah. Next up is Mind Steel. Target friendly mech, automata, or vehicle regains D6 HP on a failed um target friendly target friendly mech, automaton, or vehicle regains D3.
It's just very simple. And then the opposite of it is Mercury Rain. Target mech, automaton, vehicle takes D6 HP, which this matters more to vehicles because they have armor first. So being able to get around armor entirely and just deal damage, it's very nice. Zirconium Pants.
Yes.
You add a +1 to your save, and then you gain dodge. A lot of operatives don't have saves, but if you pop telekinesis, well, you pop a connect shield, and then you pop Zirconium Pants, gaining dodge on top of having a 5-up save is very good. And then its failed effect is it just gains dodge.
Yes.
And then March of the Tin Men, Automaton or Mech adds +2 inches. Not that insane on surface level, but having a mech zoom around at 8 inches per movement.
The heavy the light mech.
Light mech has 6
Yeah.
inches, and then you add +2. That's 8. And having a 6-inch movement is yeah. Plus having a 12-inch charge by default, and then
Or
adding on
or a 6-inch move heavy mech courtesy of that spell.
true. But no,
And
there's a
then
lot of powerful combinations. And then what we alluded to earlier for being redundant is Toxin.
we copied a lot from Pyromancy, but there's some other things in here.
Yes, they do share a lot, and that's their point. Toxin. Corrosive Gloop. Target a vehicle, automaton, or mech cannot perform a movement action. They take D6 unavoidable damage. If they have one or more operatives inside, they take damage. They take the damage result as well. The amount of operatives inflicted by this damage is equal to the damage rolled. So if you roll a 6, that's 6 operatives inside that vehicle that takes that damage. But this always means, like, if there's a piloted mech, the mech and the pilot will take damage.
Yeah.
Very good at killing someone in. In the failed effect, it's just you take 1 damage. There's no d6. Next up, Viper Strike.
But Viper's got you into the sights. Target yourself. The next attack this operative performs has poison d6 that cannot be resisted. If it already had poison d6 or greater, it gains reach on melee skill weapons or precision strike on ballistic skill weapons. And failed, no effect.
Yeah, it's just a nice little damage effect. Reach is just instead of moving when you attack with melee, you can just kind of sit back. And then precision strike, you just ignore taunt and everything. Yeah, no, you ignore. Yeah, it's basically just precision, and precision is just you ignore taunt, which is very good. Still, ignoring taunt and everything is pretty. To me, at least, it's very top tier. Trying to get around an operative is always appreciated. Black Spiral Ritual. Basically, just like spontaneous combustion, you take you maximize their poison counters, and then they take that much damage, and then you remove all those counters. Very good if they have like D6 or D3 or D8, whatever poison. Poison
There
usually
is
does poison usually does 1 damage, but since it's a bracket, it can be like D3 or D6.
yes. So the next one, Venomous Disdain. Successful effect. Target enemy operative that shot or fought the Psyker takes they gain poison D6. So like they've been poisoned, they gain D6 poison counters. And then for failed target enemy operative that shot or fought the Psyker, they gain poison D3.
So it's which could combo into Black Spiral Ritual, so it's a very harsh punishment. Then we have Plague Wind. Plague Wind is very simple. So basically, you throw out a radius of 6 inches. It exists for 1d3. It exists for 1d3 rounds. Only one Plague Wind can be active on a time for each team. When somebody enters the cloud, or whenever they enter the cloud or exist in the cloud, they gain poison 1. Whenever they fail a morale test, they gain damage equal to their poison X. So anytime they fail, they take damage and then gain another stack of it, and then so on and so forth for every time they activate inside the cloud. And then a failed effect. There is no effect, which is very appropriate because you're just throwing out a giant cloud. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. And then finally, Spit Vile Hate. This is your Pyro Burst, but it's poisoned instead. I think. So yeah, Toxin is much like Pyromancy, but where Pyromancy more revolves around burning, obviously, and increasing damage values. This one is just dealing with poison counters. So those stacks of poison could be very threatening. I would probably talk with your opponent first, or talk with your Clash Point leader, your Clash Point game master, about taking Toxin, because this could be very, as the name implies, toxic if you have multiple of these guys throwing out these abilities. It's just something to consider. With that being said, that's the wrap up on my end. Ian, are you going to say goodbye too? I'm going to. You broke out there, so I'm just going to say that was a goodbye.
Youch.